So, good morning and welcome everyone to October's The New World of New Biz webinar. I do have a very special guest, but as well as the people that you can see on screen, and I feel quite proud of myself because I'm colour coordinated. To those of you that follow us on Instagram, you'll have already seen this little man. So I'm hoping this is Bam Bam, obviously integral to our own new business efforts. Of course, he gets more likes on Instagram and LinkedIn than any of our other posts. So yeah, big shout. And as you all know, if you visited my website, I've got a pug on there as well, which is the other one that's sat beneath me. So yes, important things covered off. I'm hoping he's going to behave. Please excuse me if he doesn't. But as well as Bam Bam, who of course is the most special guest on this morning's webinar, welcome to all of you who are joining for the first time. For those of you that have been with us, for a few months, or at least for at least one previous session, I think we're on session now 6 or 7, and really this webinar aims to discuss everything that's been happening in the world of agency new business, how we can attract and win more new business, get the cut through that we need, and of course, really start talking to the brands that need our help more than ever. So this month I have a stellar lineup of what I would like to say is probably the royalty of agency owners, founders, and all very expert in new business for lots of different reasons. So we've got lots and lots of very exciting questions to ask. We're really going to be focusing in on prospecting. So for those of you, which I know month on month, we always have a lot of feedback in the poll about prospecting. So those of you that are interested in how to do better prospecting, I'm hoping today you're going to leave with some really good ideas and tactics. But before we do that, you'll see, as well as the lovely Bam Bam, we have another surprise guest with us, which is my friend Jody, who is one of the directors at Propeller Group. So us new biz people, we do all play nicely together. Hopefully us standing side by side here today proves that. And Jody's just here to introduce, as well as being a director at Propeller, and a very experienced person in new business, he also is the founder of the BD 100. So has a little announcement for you all.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. Just crashing the party for a couple of minutes. So brilliant to see as many people as you've been getting on each of these sessions, Katie. I think it's been great to bring everyone together. And like you said, I think it's so important that everyone does come together at this time to sort of share insights and experience, which is sort of exactly what we had in mind when we launched the BD 100 a couple of years ago. And appreciate all your support with this over the last few years, Katie, and well done on making the list for 2 years running. I guess in terms of my role for both the Propeller as Director of Growth, where we help agencies with growth and reputation, we sort of know firsthand how challenging new business has been this year. And in terms of launching the BD 100, it was really to sort of try and recognise all the great business developers out there in what we felt was often an underrepresented and under-recognised profession. So we've been running it now for 2 years, where we have a top 100 list. We have awards at the end of each year to celebrate the best in the business of business development. And we felt this year is more important than ever. So some of you may have seen already, but nominations are now live. Therefore, we're looking to really sort of get everyone nominating people you think have done a great job this year. So I think there's been some great ambition, some hard work, tenacity, creativity sort of shown by business developers. And that's been coming through in the nominations, people really sort of sharing recognition for people that have done a great job, and really hopefully drawing inspiration from the success that people have been able to achieve in what's been obviously challenging times. So the nominations are live. If you go to the BD 100 Club or BD100.club, I'll drop a link in the notes, and I'm sure Katie will share the link with you. There's an option to nominate someone. So nominate if it's a peer or someone in your team or an employee, even a rival, anyone that you think has done a great job this year. Make sure they're nominated. That runs till the end of October. So 31st of October is when the nominations close. We'll then be selecting the top 100 and announcing that at an event that we'll be running an online conference called Winning Together on the 26th of November. So we'll also send details to you for that as well, which will be bringing everyone together to celebrate brilliant business development, Q&As, interaction, keynotes, panels, everything. So hopefully see you all then. looking forward to the session today. Again, thanks for Katie for running these. They've been really good during the last few months, just keeping us all sharp, and get your nominations in.
Fab. Thank you so much, Jody. And Jody is going to sort of stay with us in the background. So if there are any questions, and if anyone wants to dive back into a conversation or has any questions for Jody, of course, submit them as normal in the Q&A or on the chat. And Jody will be able to answer them. So yeah, thank you so much, Jody. And I might turn your video back on at the end. So on to this month's fantastic guests. Now, I don't really know where to start, so I'm gonna introduce everyone, and then we're gonna dive right into the prospecting conversation. First up, the wonderful Daniel Hemsley. So Daniel and I actually met at the beginning of lockdown. He is the managing director of Swamp Motel. And I think, well, this goes to prove that good content from a prospecting point of view does work, because Daniel actually found me, if I remember correctly, Daniel, because I think I posted an article on how to navigate new business during COVID, quite early doors, maybe back in April on Medium or somewhere like that.
Something like that, yeah.
One of the blogging sources. So yeah, Daniel not only is the founder of what Swamp Motel, I think, have done, probably one of the 2 or 3 agencies that I've been keeping a keen eye on, because they have probably made one of the biggest pivots. So any of you that read the emails that I quite excitedly send out prior to these sessions, Swamp Motel have had to totally pivot. They were an immersive experience or experiential agency, mainly operating in the physical world, which of course has now disappeared, with us hoping that it might come back a little bit for small groups, to now not coming back for another at least 6 months by the looks of things. So quite cleverly, Swamp Motel made some very big pivots and have actually totally changed their offering to market, which has helped them attract potential new business, but also opened them up to a totally new audience. So I'm going to dive straight into chatting to Daniel about that shortly. We also have the very lovely Richard Norton. So Richard Norton is co-founder of Tiny Giant. Loving the background, Richard. You're so cool. You can tell that you're in AI and all that fantastic stuff.
I will say, Katie, before you carry on with your lovely introduction, that innovation of green screen, of course, if this conversation today gets a bit too spicy or the questions get too hard, the fantastic innovation of the front green screen, whereby you simply not actually here anymore.
Oh, I love that.
At any point.
You need to teach me this stuff. I need to know it. So Richard usually refers to himself as Norts. We've got you as your very posh name, Richard Norton. And Norts was actually one of the last people that I hosted a physical event with prior to lockdown, right at the beginning of March. So we had breakfast together in a posh venue in Covent Garden, and we had some fantastic guests there. And Norts does some really great things in terms of his agency and what they do. They actually work with other agencies as well as brand direct. But again, Richard has always had quite a unique approach to new business. And I think one of our last conversations is actually about an approach that he did to Miller Harris, which I'm going to force you to share very, very shortly.
Okie dokie.
So yeah, over to you soon. And then last but definitely not least, drum roll please, the wonderful Margaret Manning, who is joining us all the way from Singapore. We are officially international now. And Margaret has an OBE. I mean, wow, if I had a hat and taking it off and bowing and whatever else, curtsying, yes, exactly, whatever I should be doing to a wonderful lady.
Yes, but I don't have a front green screen, and frankly...
Margaret, what are we doing?
This is what I need. That was awesome, Notes. Please tell us how to do it.
Yeah, definitely. That's something there.
That's a question too hard to answer. Sorry.
Oh, I love it. I do love it.
Margaret was group CEO and founder, Margaret, of reading room,
Yes.
which actually Margaret and I figured out because I was introduced to Margaret by our sponsors of the series so far just after midnight, because Sam, their founder, used to work in the new business role for Margaret. So Margaret has had an amazing career. Reading Room, for those of you that work in the digital space, will probably know them very well, but grew to become one of the UK's largest digital agencies with offices across the UK and then worldwide. She sold the business in 2015, has then led a management buy-in, I think, for the APAC businesses. You've been working at EY, Adelphi Digital as a consultant over in Singapore. But I think one of the great things that Margaret will be able to share with us today is just how she's adapted and launched a business and grown a business in new markets with very different consumers, etc. So yeah, it's going to be a lively discussion today. I'm very excited. Please do submit your questions. I know it always gets really busy with questions, so apologies in advance if I don't get around to them. I promise I will try and do my best. So Daniel, straight into you. I think our audience would be, there will be lots of agencies out there that have had to pivot. I know, there are lots of stats out there about, companies in general. I think around 50% of companies have had to launch new services or products in order to survive amidst the pandemic. But I know you had to pivot pretty quickly, and I was talking to you whilst that was all happening. So do you want to tell our lovely audience what you've done and what's been happening?
Absolutely. Thank you, Katie. Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Hemsley, the MD at Motel. Our journey has been an interesting one, and it's nice to come back to Katie when we're sort of in the position we are now. So thinking back, we've kind of changed completely. We saw 95% of our pipeline drop out, which, as anyone who manages a pipeline can imagine, is typically fairly problematic. And that has led to kind of a change in how we do pretty much everything. I'd say pre-lockdown, Swamp Motel was primarily a brand experience agency, and we're now an immersive entertainment company. So I'll explain that journey in a bit more detail. So our creative directors and our founders have a background in theatre. That's probably meant that historically we've been at our most comfortable taking over a warehouse and turning it into a new world within which we tell an immersive experience. That's been launching the Kensington branch of Dishoom with an Indian sort of neo-noir, recreating Raccoon City, a kind of zombie-infested police station for Capcom for the launch of Resident Evil 2. Obviously, all these things don't really happen anymore. So I think it's good to also point out that at this point, and this is where Katie sort of re-enters the story, historically, we had done new business pretty badly. As any small agency, we started in 2017, we're very, very new. As any small agency, I think we followed that typical evolution of writing our black book, kind of fairly thin. People, lost interest in hearing from us. But we did everything there, sort of dabbling with prospecting, outreach, and a bit of speed dating, with mixed results. But in March, when the pipeline went the way that it did, I think new business became less about growth and much more about survival. So, which led us to kind of completely change our approach and how we were going to do things. I think we looked around, and obviously there was a huge amount of uncertainty at that time, as there very much still is, and a corresponding amount of budget, as you'd expect. So we sort of sat down and did a good amount of soul searching and a fair degree of head scratching, I would say. Kind of asking ourselves, what are we going to do? And those questions ranged from, are we going to shut down the business? If we look at really what we do, that world has pretty much ended now for, we don't know how long, the foreseeable future at least. So what are we going to do? Why are we doing what we do? And actually came to the conclusion that, we want to keep doing that. This is what we love doing. So let's keep doing it. So, okay, if we understand the environment, what does that look like? So we began, I guess, creating a product, and Plymouth Point, as it is called, was born from there. So as an agency, I think at this point it was quite liberating. We don't often set our own briefs, so that was quite fun. And I think what we really wanted to do was, if we can remember that time, even though it feels like a lifetime ago, even though it was relatively recently, you couldn't leave the house for anything other than sort of food, shopping, and exercise. And the brief that we set ourselves was, we want to give people a visceral live experience and an opportunity to share something with remote audiences and friends and family that in a way that you can't do in anything else at the moment. And so from there, we sort of began experimenting with our typical, how we like to tell stories, how we create immersive experiences, but just putting all of that through Zoom. So what does an online immersive experience, words which obviously I've said quite a lot in recent times, what does that look like when delivered through Zoom? And we began experimenting and playing internally and kind of realized that, we really like this. There's an opportunity here. So we went from there. We launched in May with an initial 3-week run that we didn't necessarily know where it would go, but really it was about doing something and responding. And we've just been overwhelmed by the response from both audiences and amazingly in the press as well. So we were reviewed in The Guardian and ticket sales, I guess, rocketed 5,000%, which was quite exciting, as you can imagine. And we've now sold thousands of tickets and we're about to extend the launch until Christmas at the very least. And we have a sequel in the works called The Mermaid's Tongue, which we will be launching next week. I think from our point of view as an agency, we wanted to prove that brand experience wasn't dead. And I think that's probably the key bit, is that we did prove that. And now we're having conversations with our clients, new and old, and they're kind of coming back to us going, this isn't something that we could have greenlit, could have got budget to do. But now that you've proven that there's an appetite for this and there's interest for this, I think this is something that we can consider and we can kind of take forward to get sign off for, which I think is a key point. And from us as well, I think, what we did really was try something, and obviously that took a degree of bravery and potentially necessity. But yeah, I would really just question, for the agencies out there to kind of look at what you do and why you do it and try and come back to that. That was really what we focused on. I would also, potentially controversially say, do your clients need another point of view at a time when, let's be honest, none of us really know where any of this is going? I haven't read a point of view since March, probably, for good reason. And yeah, I think that was it. We're still very much selling and kind of dealing with the core thing that we've always sold and dealt with, which is audience engagement. It just needed to be reimagined, and that's what we've done.
And I think that's what we spoke about really early on, Daniel, is the importance of understanding what your audience need, which you guys have done, right? Your audience were lacking a way to engage themselves, but also to engage their audience. So you very bravely created something that does that. And I think, that's been the same. I haven't done anything anywhere near as creative as you, but I hope that with these sessions, they're quite fun, they're interesting, they give, they're helping my audience. Hence we have over 700 people signed up nowadays, and probably attending the webinars between 100 and 300 people sign in every month, and we have another couple of hundred people watch them on YouTube. You've got to think about what your audience needs and then how you can help them. And I think the biggest thing is just to try something. When you came up with the idea, Daniel, did you intend it to be a new business tactic, or was it a money-making thing, or did you think, this actually could, because obviously it's been both, but did you think it would be both?
Yeah, I think it's probably hard to look back now. I think we probably didn't really dare dream that it would be the success that it has been. Certainly we thought, worst case scenario would give us something to talk to our clients about at a time when, I think early on we sort of, called up our clients and understood the lay of the land really. And I think, we had certainly, we do a lot of work with Verizon Media and our clients there were sort of going, what you guys do is more relevant than ever. And we were sort of thinking, if you say so. But, it was true. And I think, going back to that, we sort of played around with it, realized it had legs. It was the kind of thing that we really like. And then when we were about 50% of the way through the development of it, we were again kind of going to key clients and saying, is this something you'd like to test for us, and really bringing them on that journey. I think we didn't know that it was going to go on to be the success that it has been. But I think we thought worst case scenario, we actually, it was very, at the beginning, the humble beginnings, we kind of planned to use it as a fundraising device for a local charity. And we didn't expect it to sort of have the longevity that it's had, but we just sort of wanted to, obviously we were struggling, but so was everybody else, and we wanted to give something back. So that was kind of the origin of it, and then it just went from there.
Yeah, and amazing. I mean, if anyone's seen it around, again, we'll send a link out after, but it is so much fun. Me and the team were lucky probably to be in the first kind of round, I think in that initial 3 weeks, and it was so fun, especially when we were all stuck in, like, obviously the world opened up a little bit more over the summer, but you're back in, I don't know when it was that we would have done it, May sort of time.
Around then, definitely.
Yeah, it would have been May sort of time. It was actually really lovely to spend time with the team and actually do something fun. So yeah, I mean, seriously, hats off to you, really. Margaret, I'm going to pick on you next. So over in Singapore, I know that there's again been a lot happening. You guys have been pretty badly affected. What have you seen happening in the market? And I guess good new business tactics, prospecting tactics. Is there anything that you've seen that has potentially kind of, stuck out to you, or, really seemed like it's been a good way of a different approach? Because I'm sure things are slightly different out there.
Actually, surprisingly not. Prospecting is prospecting anywhere and everywhere. But prospecting is very different depending on what type of agency you have. So if you have, I'm sure Daniel would agree, if you have a product, the way that you actually prospect for clients is going to be very, very different than if you have, say, a niche agency. I know Norton has got some very, very amazing technology products and ideas, or an agency. So the businesses that I was CEO of were digital agencies. So how do you prospect as a digital agency when there are myriad other digital agencies? So I'm not going to actually, obviously we've got Norton and we've got Daniel who have amazing creative ideas. I'd like to actually look at the concept of prospecting in a more holistic way. So one thing that I think that is really very helpful, there's something called the Innovation Wheel, which is created by Dublin. And the Innovation Wheel is really useful for when you're looking at prospecting as well. So it actually takes a business and it splits it into 3 different components. Obviously, there is the offering, the creative offering. Are you innovative? Can you do your prospecting around your offering? Then there is the experience. How do clients actually perceive you? What is the interaction between you and the client? The experience of you as an agency. And then there is the configuration. The configuration is the engine room. So it actually, if you've got the best idea in the world, the most creative idea in the world, unless you have got the experience that backs that offering up, and if you don't have the configuration, the engine room that backs up your prospecting, then it's not going to work. So at different stages within our business growth in the UK, and in Singapore, different parts of that innovation wheel came into play. But it's always really useful to understand each of those kind of parts and how they are playing, which part is most important at this moment in time. So for example, when we came to Singapore, we knew nobody. Absolutely nobody. But what we did have was we had an amazing portfolio. And that we found the portfolio actually transferred fantastically overseas. But it was the configuration, it was the engine room, it was our CRM process, it was our new business processes, how we did new business, that actually enabled us to unlock a marketplace very, very rapidly. So that kind of brings me on to kind of what is the engine room? The engine room is your data. Do you have good data? Do you have good, clean data? In order to pivot, you need to have that good, clean data that you can use. Do you have the financial data? Daniel was talking about, are we actually going to be in business? Do you know how much legroom, headroom you have in order to survive, but not only to survive. Today and now is a time that actually accentuates strengths and weaknesses. So it is the time when agencies can grow. Although it is a risky time, those agencies that have the data on which to base really good risk can grow very, very rapidly. So it's an optimistic time if you have that engine room that gives you the ability to be agile. And then the last thing, certainly not the least thing, in fact, probably the most important thing, is the team. Do you have a team that supports your prospecting? Now, everyone thinks, and Jody, you have your business development top 100. The person that I would put forward for my business development top 100, other than the lovely Sam Booth that runs just after midnight in the UK, and Chris Croucher, who runs just after midnight in Australia, and Freddie Haygate, who runs just after midnight in Singapore, all of whom used to work for a reading room in Adelphi, would actually be a lovely lady called Shona Green, who was our receptionist. Receptionist doesn't quite put it right. She was front of house. She was pivotal to our new business effort. Every single person that picked up the phone, that walked into the office, got a feeling for the experience that was then reading room. She wasn't just a receptionist. She was key to the growth of our business. So the team is everybody on the team. Every phone call that is made to you, every email that comes into your business is actually a new business call or email. Very, very important if you're growing a business to make sure that all of that adds up. It's not just your salespeople.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a couple of things that I want to pick up on there. So what I think is interesting, like you say, Norts, we are going to come to you in a second, I promise. You've shown off too much, Steve, with your green screen. I'm making you wait now.
I got nothing else.
We know it's not true.
You don't need anything else if you've got that, no?
I know, that's fun stuff. But I do agree with you, and it's something that we do for the more traditional, larger scale agencies that we potentially work with. We are thinking in the current marketplace. Do we need to do agencies that maybe don't have the exciting things that Tiny Giant and Swamp Motel, who also have very cool names, by the way, maybe they don't have those productized offerings. Should they be productizing their offering? And it is something that we are actually exploring with clients, where we are starting to try and make, because to my mind, there's various things that you've got to be able to do when you're prospecting for new business. You've got to identify a need. So Daniel, you've talked very beautifully about you understood the needs of your audience and you created something that fed them. So first of all, you've got to do that, but then you've got to be able to package it up in a way that's easy to buy, or easy to sell, however you want to frame it. So there's two really important things that you've got to be able to do, which in your case, Daniel, I guess, not to say that what you haven't done hasn't been hard work, because you've created something amazing and there's been lots of hard work, but you understood your audience's need, you took a risk, you packaged it up, people purchase it quite easily, they can see what they're going to get. If you're selling a digital transformation project or something like Reading Room may have been working on, obviously it isn't quite as packageable a deal. And in the current marketplace, I just wonder whether having kind of packages or so brands or consumers or whoever it is that you're marketing your agency to can understand how you're going to help them really clearly and also buy you really easily. If that's something, I'd love to hear all of your opinions, not just yours, Margaret, but Norts, feel free to chip in here if you feel that that's something that is more important in today's market.
It's vital that you can double down on what it is that your business is about. And I actually thought that Daniel just did that beautifully. He absolutely described what the business was about. And it actually wasn't about being an experiential agency, and it wasn't about creating a product. It was about creating theatre. And that was fantastic. So clients' needs change and vary. A client's need in Singapore might be different to that in Australia, a government client, a brand. But if you understand what you are about, so let's say with Daniel, it's easy to say he's about, or the business is about theatre, producing theatrical experience across. If you can package that and understand what a client might need in terms of, so for example, we worked, and I know you worked, Katie, with a lot of charities. A charity's need for digital transformation could be very, very different to government or brand. So having products that will sell to a charity, to government and to brand could be different. But don't worry, or double down on making that straightforward, and don't try to be everything to everybody. Clients are much more likely, I believe, in my experience, to go to somebody if they do digital transformation for charities.
Yeah.
Very clear.
Yeah.
That doesn't actually stop a B2B brand coming to you and saying, you do digital transformation for charities, I know you do it very well. Are you prepared to do X, Y, Z? Can you do it for a museum, for example, at different times? So if you're very clear with your service or your product, it makes it easier for a client to come to you. Absolutely. But I don't think you can generalize. It's not possible to generalize. Reading Room in the early days had very productized services because digital was very new and very scary. And that really helped us in getting clients to understand what it was that they were buying, not being fearful of us, not being fearful of the process. But that might be very different for different agencies. So I think Norton has got quite a different sales technique because it's a different type of product.
Yeah. So on to you, Norts. Now, last time we chatted, I know that you've had some quite unique approaches to prospecting and the tactics that you've used, and we chatted about a specific one, which I think at the time you hadn't heard back from the lady, because I'm a big fan of a perfume brand called Miller Harris. We were hanging around outside their store in Covent Garden, which is...
That's very kind of you to say that.
Yeah.
I would say I was haranguing the staff member.
Yes, you were. You were. Hey, your CEO hasn't come back to me, and I've sent her something amazing. So do you want to, I mean, look, as someone who has, and all of you guys have, you've built, as I have, I guess, to a certain extent, built a business from scratch. Talk about some of the prospecting tactics, or some of the more unique prospecting tactics that you've used that have worked when you've been trying to outreach to new clients.
Okay, so I guess the starting point, just to set up sort of Tiny Giant, who we are.
Yes.
Myself and Kerry Harrison set this business up about 2 years ago. We come from a advertising background. We worked in ad agencies and marketing places, and they've done that. When we first set up Tiny Giant, I think people thought we were having some sort of midlife crisis. But suddenly we were saying, oh, what we're going to do, we're going to sort of blend creativity and advertising with AI and AR, and it's all going to be... And I think when we started, we were like excited, a bit like your dogs, actually. We're like excited puppies. And we just thought emerging tech, any opportunity to get that dog on the screen, right? We just wanted to make emerging tech. So we said, oh, we're going to do chatbots, and we can do voice skills. And we had this whole kind of tranche of all these different things, right? Because we wanted to sort of do everything in emerging tech, and you can apply your skills to it. What we kind of found was that actually we were sort of we started off sort of being considered almost jack of no trades, master of none, because people don't necessarily know what you do. And then over the course of time, people started to sort of, there's the notion of creating your brand, and people started to actually engage with some of your services, which happened to be, by chance, creative AI. So if you just prior to when we met, so last year we were fortunate enough from a brave, bold, pioneering client, which is a very key part for people who work with us, to win a DMA award last year, gold, for best use of AI. And the simply winning of that then prompts a lot of people flood in to talk to you. One of which, can't say who they were, one of which was a very high rolling marketing bod from a very famous fashion brand, who basically wanted to know more about what we do with creative AI. and using data sets to do interesting things, one of which seemed kind of obvious to us. Why don't you use machine learning to create beautiful perfumes? And so we'd had a conversation, it kind of went cold. And then I kind of thought, well, okay, because ultimately you have to find the right people to do this work with. And I thought, well, who are the brave, bold, pioneering people in these particular areas? Yeah, we think we could do something with perfume. So, you know, we're not averse as a business to contacting these kind of CEOs directly and saying, hey, have you ever thought about, you know, and sometimes it kind of works if you put an idea in front of them. Sometimes it doesn't. I think as we've gone on, we've kind of learned also that you can tell people about emerging technology. You can tell them about what creative AI can do, or you can show them, you can tell them about AR, but people get excited when they see it. I suppose that's a big difference. Sometimes you have to kind of do proof of concepts, little demos to say, this is the thing I'm talking about. Wouldn't it be amazing to do that? And it's kind of gone from there. I suppose from a sort of, if we're talking about tactics in the times of pandemic, I suppose one of the things we've done as a business, we basically, we met up with a business mentor right at the start who basically said, create some pillars that you can use as almost like your tick box. So we don't show them to the world, but they basically allow us to decide if a project feels right for us. So ultimately, first thing was, we say we help pioneering brands create standout experiences, craft ideas, craft new experiences, and step into new media and tech. That's what we're about. Sometimes people come to us and they'll say, using machine learning, oh, can you I'll put my voice on now. Oh, could you help us put 1% on our Facebook digital response on the ads and stuff like that? And that's kind of an efficiency thing, and you could do that, but it's just not something that we're particularly interested in, right? I'm sure you might be able to make yourself a billionaire, and there are businesses, you know, in and around the UK that can do that, but we're very much about using things creatively. And one of the key things to us was a bit like what Daniel and co have done with their thing, was about this idea to create almost like surprise and joy in everything we do, and that's been a sort of really key parameter for us. And I guess the other thing is we've kind of slimmed down what we do. We to use a wanky marketing term. Sorry, we've gone very vertical, and we've gone deep on that. So things like, you know, bots and voice and all these other things, they're all great, and yeah, but we want to concentrate on the things that we seem to now have a reputation for, which is essentially using creative AI to help marketers and advertising and doing AR. So we have made a sort of decision to go niche, but also now another thing that's come out of the pandemic is that now we're willing to almost teach people the dark arts, because there's lots of, you know, you read AI everywhere, isn't it? And so that we now run courses where people can sign up, and we'll sort of show them what's possible, because often people don't know what you can do. Who even knew you could do that, right?
I know.
Yeah. Well, exactly. So we've done that. So we have courses. So we've gone much narrower to what we do, but we've kind of deepened the experience of what you can learn. And we've also moved into sort of creating AI music for podcasts, for all sorts of things like that. And for festivals, one of the things was, prior to lockdown, we did lots of experiential stuff for festivals. Now you can't do that if you're not there, but what's happened to a lot of festivals is that they've come online, and so therefore, you know, you want to make, much as Swamp Motel, you want to make that experience more memorable, more interesting. It just so happens that the tools of kind of creative AI and social augmented reality and social can kind of do that sort of stuff. So it's been it's a happy accident, but yeah, I think going narrow was a kind of smart move in the pandemic. But I suppose the other thing, going back to your question, we have a very eclectic approach to wanting to talk to people. We often think we have an idea for that business or brand. Well, let's just ask them. And, you know, I don't know what the situation is regarding their relationship, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And like all these things, Katie, as you know, very often in new business, these things don't happen instantaneously, do they? People come back to you 3 months, 6 months. It takes a little
while sometimes, yeah. And I love what you're talking about. Well, there's two things that I want to pick up on. One is, I think it's a very interesting subject, and I'm not sure it's right for all agencies, but I do definitely see a huge trend in the agencies that are doing better becoming more niche. And I think that's, all of you have echoed that, that you've doubled down and understood your audience, and therefore developed a more niche offering that is more, you know, viable by understanding your audience. So for agencies out there that haven't looked at themselves, and are still trying to market themselves like they were pre the pandemic, I totally, and Daniel, I know you and I spoke about this really early on, is you need to look at that as quickly as you possibly can, because your audience's needs, some of the needs will be the same, but the likelihood is that they will have changed, and therefore you will need to adapt your messaging to and potentially your tactics. And the other thing that I really like, that again I think especially Daniel and Richard, you have worked on, is niche tactics. So many times I have, and I'm not saying that the old school way of, and it's not, okay, maybe it's not even old school, but creating nice written content isn't helpful. And Daniel, you referenced this really early on, is but there's so many bloody insights out there. You've got to have really good SEO, you've got to be posting in the right places, you've got to work hard to get your written content noticed, unless you're very lucky and you've been working on developing a very engaged audience, which is what I hope we've done, and we do for the agencies that we work with. But if you don't have that, your content isn't necessarily going to magically get picked up. So in order to attract the audience that you want, you have to think of tactics, so things like Daniel's done and Tiny Giant have done, and Margaret's been helping agencies do out in Singapore. You've got to create tactics, and we help agencies do. So that might be a webinar, it might be some kind of webinars obviously are incredibly popular, but they're not the only thing. It might be a piece of content, it might be something very unique like a immersive experience like Daniel has created. It might be a piece of video content, but something that is going to resonate with your audience and is a thing. Just sending out or posting up an article and hoping that loads of people are going to come and find you is not going to happen. You've got to have a tactic that represents what you do and the value that you add and how you're going to help them, and then you need to use that to push it out to the market. And that again, like you were saying, Margaret, you need to have good quality data to do that. There's lots of great platforms out there that we can go to. Jody is actually the I think you're the Jody, please pipe up on chat if I'm wrong, but UK license holder for a platform called Wimmo, which gives you a real strength when it comes to data, because it's got all the contact details of the prospects that you want. It's again got fantastic things like AI baked in. So you need to have good tactics, you need to have good data, and you need to understand the needs of your audience. And if you've got to my mind, if you've got those three things working, then absolutely you should start to engage and start conversations with your prospects. And when we do that well for our client. I hope with all of our clients we do that well, but we're able to generate meetings and interest really, really quickly. And although we're always working on building a longer term pipeline, of course everyone right now needs opportunities now. It's bloody busy out there. I'm hoping again we'll run the poll again this month, but that you're all seeing an uplift in opportunities come in. It's certainly we are for our clients, and it's it's sung through on the poll again last month, and I'm hoping even more so when we do it this month and next month. So in order to win the clients that need you, you really do need to be pushing out to the market as well as generating that content that will help you pull in the longer term. But you've done some quite fun things, Richard, haven't you, as well? Oh, sorry, you go, Daniel.
No, I was just going to say, Katie, that I definitely echo what you're saying, and I think a few things that both Margaret and Norts have said there. I think definitely kind of understanding, obviously, but for sort of smaller agencies, understanding your headroom and what you can do. But then for us, I think what really worked was probably taking on the risk ourselves, and just sort of being able to go to clients and say, look, this is a thing now. We've kind of proven that. But then I think to a point that Nort said, that was a lot more interesting for us as a business and a lot more exciting than kind of sitting and waiting for our long-term new business to come back around, right? So it was way more interesting, and we got a lot out of it. It's kind of crazy that we're like fundamentally a completely different business. We've had to hire in sort of 10 or so people to kind of manage this whole new arm, and which is great as well. But yeah, it's kind of come back now full circle to actually be delivering on the kind of new business side of things. And I do think, again, to echo what was said, and kind of hopefully things that people listening in can kind of take away, is that niche kind of zeroing in on our niche is really what helped. And to say as well, something that Nort's focused on, which is funny but we also worked with a business mentor early on, who just like held us to task almost about what are you about, what are you doing, what do you want to be doing. And it sounds maybe a little light touch, but it was incredibly helpful. And Christoph Staunton, for anyone who does need a bit of help, I'm sure he'd be pleased to hear, because he was phenomenal for us in terms of just helping us understand what we are actually trying to do, and how to then kind of with an eye on continuing what we enjoy doing and then kind of moving out of this, was really helpful. But certainly the sort of niche piece is important, I think. And waiting on people to understand, I think we're not in the right environment for that. So I would encourage people to not take that approach.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'd like to echo as well that the mentor piece. We also had a business mentor, Richard, that did virtually very similar to what you suggested you had, which is the pillars. And it's really important to think about your business in terms of those holistic pillars, not just one thing, not just outreach, not just content. It's how it all fits together. And a lot of people are really, I don't know, they shy away from the concept of mentors. And I don't quite understand why. I mean, I've had personal mentors, we've had business mentors, and in all cases, they have really propelled us on our way. Yeah. We're not worried about going to the gym and paying for training. We're not worried about getting guitar lessons and paying for training. And yet business and work is the majority of our lives. And yet so many people seem to be very nervous about the concept of getting a mentor.
Yeah, or see it as a waste of money, which is crazy. I mean, I hope that's what we help people do. Certainly when we're helping agencies.
Absolutely.
Value proposition, but it is one fundamentally, I would say, and God, I mean, I'm up for all sorts of counselling, mentorship, and life coaching. I've done it all over the years, and again, find it so helpful in my personal. I don't think I'd have launched my own business without it. To kind of validate ideas and also to keep yourself accountable, right? Sometimes, certainly when you're a business owner, which there will, or you're in charge, or an MD of a business, which I know there are lots of you on here, having that momentum and someone to talk to, especially if you don't have, any other directors or shareholders in the business, is so important. And whatever stage of the your business is at, I think now more than it's always been important, but I think that is probably heightened now as well. Now we do have a little question, and I have a hand raised, which I will also look at in a second. But question is, which I think I might have started to answer, but yeah, there's from a lovely gentleman called Wayne Silver. There is a lot of talk about single-minded propositions, very focused product offerings. And the old adage, do one thing well, which definitely is singing true to me at the moment. But how important does the panel feel it is at least to understand the omni-channel environment into which their product fits? Because of course, marketing decision makers are very often working across the entire marketing mix. And is it an agency's job to explain how their service or how their service or product fits into the bigger picture? I mean, I would say incredibly important. Would love to hear your answers on this one before I talk too much, which I tend to do.
If I seem to be getting dark, it's actually dark. It's getting to be nighttime in Singapore, so I might fade into the background like Richard did, but not quite so cleverly.
That ship, Margaret, pulling into the harbour.
It hasn't come in yet. It's really rather beautiful. I'll pick up on that. The omni-channel piece is actually totally vital. When you say double down on your offering, doubling down on your offering doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be as deep and as slim as Nort's business. An offering could be digital transformation. Now, digital transformation is very wide and very deep. But equally, it's vital that businesses large and small are very clear not only about their offering but where it fits within a business. And I would actually challenge the marketing slant there. What I'm seeing in Singapore, I don't know if you're seeing it so much in the UK, I would guess that you are, is that what we are doing for businesses now is wider than the marketing department. Businesses themselves are being challenged by COVID. Our brands are being challenged by COVID, and they are changing and they are adapting. And more often now, our offerings are actually sold across the board to a wider C group. It's the CEO, it's the CTO, it's the CMO, it's the Chief Digital Officer. So I think the way that we approach businesses needs to be adaptive to how those businesses themselves are changing.
Agreed. Yeah, it's wider than just the marketing mix now. It's the entirety of the business, that you need to, well, you can't understand all of it, but you need to make your prospects believe that you care and that you have an understanding of their challenges, not just from a marketing point of view, but also from a business point of view. What are their objectives? And this is something I talk about a lot, probably on here and also in my podcast and other things. But you need to make a concerted effort when you're starting those kind of conversations and you're in an RFP situation or in a pitch scenario or even earlier, that you understand their challenges and you're going to be able to help them. So your offering is going to help with part of that journey, but you need to have done your research and make sure that you understand how you're going to help the business at a wider level, I think, and how that
absolutely, yes.
Yeah, Daniel, I think you were going to say something as well earlier.
Yeah, I think the niche response is probably, we, with all of these things, we would always add, we are specialists in what we do, and we always advocate to bring in other specialists and kind of be upfront. I think in the environment that we're in now, you aren't going to kind of sneak anything in. So you do it, the answer is probably to be open about who you would partner with and potentially bring those people in and try and offer I guess the omni-channel approach and where that's relevant. But certainly, yeah, we always advocate transparency and bringing in the best partners and specialists in their field.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, something that's another thing, and I'm sure you'll all echo this, that we have seen more and more of is the opportunity and the success of working with partners, and new partnerships are cropping up all the time. Inter-agency partnerships, new tech partnerships, something we would not have survived. And Jody, who joined us earlier very kindly, actually, not end of last year, probably end of year before. Oh God, I don't even know what year it is anymore. I'm so confused. But introduced us to Kulia, which is a fantastic marketing automation platform, which I would not have achieved half of the things that I need to achieve just using MailChimp and the platforms we were using prior to the pandemic. I have got my own new partnerships that I now, have my clients have the benefit of, has enabled us. I mean, I was doing some research actually this morning on email sends. So seeing as we're talking about prospecting, sorry, I'd like to go off piste, but I'm very interested in all this kind of stuff. But we used to do a lot of our email sends at either 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. because pre-pandemic, those were when we used to get the best open rates, and we would usually do sends on a Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday because those were the days that get the best open rates. And that's just from us doing it ourselves, but also keeping an eye on stats and using various different research methodologies to make sure that we're staying ahead of the game. Of course, and it probably only hit me a couple of months ago to go, bloody hell, the whole world's changed. Of course, the send times that we used to use for our prospecting emails are not going to be the best times anymore. So we have absolutely changed that, and now in fact we're going to be doing some research, and I've just challenged, I don't know if she's here on the call, but one of the girls to write an article about this, so we will share it with you all at some point. But that we're now doing our sends and actually evidence, I think you can start seeing some of the reports from campaign, etc., but there's nothing specific for agency B2B emails. So that's what I'm specifically going to be reporting on, because that's what we do and what we have been doing. We've got some really interesting stats on it, but we're getting much better response rates, sending between 8 and 9 and then again at 2. And where we used to send at 10, 11 in the morning, we're all stuck on bloody Zoom. I don't know about you guys, but I'm stuck on Zoom calls all morning, most mornings, briefing the teams, work on calls with our clients. So if someone sends me an email, not that I'm not going to read it at some point, but I'm going to be going through a whole load of emails when I get to it. So sending me something at 10, 11, 12 o'clock is much less likely to get read. Whereas if I've got it in my inbox first thing before I go on my calls at sort of 8 a.m, I'll pay attention to it a lot more, as I will at 2 p.m. And that's, after lunch and when I've got all my calls, or,
I think partnerships are also a really, really important part of prospecting, because partners, different companies have different approaches to their prospecting. So if you can hook up with a partner that their product actually matches or works with your product or your service, you can get double the amount of prospecting together.
Yeah.
But by going to market in two different ways.
Yeah, without a doubt.
We used to work a lot with content management systems, with technology partners, and technology partners work in a totally different, very productized basis.
Yes. Yeah, it's really interesting actually. Sorry, we've only got 3 minutes left, and now we're getting into the guts of the conversation. This always happens. But I think I similarly to you, and probably the same platform partners as well, Margaret. The like Sitecore, Episerver.
Absolutely, yes, you've got it.
And there's lots more. But we used to have very close relationships, and and in fact, in pre-pandemic, a couple of 2-3 years ago, when I was doing more consultancy work as well, there were the bigger agencies out there are looking to employ specific partner directors just to manage those partnerships, because there's such a huge untapped opportunity there, and it's very much relationship based. So you need someone
absolutely
own and really work those relationships. Same as with intermediaries. If you invest in a relationship, same as in normal life, right? In our personal lives, you've got to invest time into those relationships to make them work and make them brilliant. I feel like we've run out of time way too early again today. So I'm just going to ask you all very quickly before I finish up. Quick one-liner tip for everyone. What would be your top prospecting tip? Let's go to you first, Norts. What should people do?
Be bold, be brave, be prepared to fail with the message, because if nobody ever reads or sees what you say, then it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Don't just love that. And over to you, Daniel.
I would just echo what Nort said, but I think when Margaret and yourself, Katie, were just speaking, I think the other thing is not to forget what underpins all that, which is, I think, your new business basics, and just make sure that all of for us, that's an entirely kind of new ecosystem of platforms and all that. But you really want that stuff in place, and you want that firing. And I think from my point of view, as I already said, our answer there is going to go to the specialists. And Katie was instrumental in us in telling us what we didn't know, which was a long list. So I would definitely be bold and be brave, but then don't forget the basics at the same time.
Yeah, agreed. And Margaret, also from you.
Nort stole my be brave and take risks, so I will go on. The landscape out there is changing. Our clients are changing extremely quickly. You need to look at prospecting not just from a very slim marketing perspective, but from a whole of business perspective. Be agile, get all your business involved, not just one part of it.
Brilliant. And just before we end, and I'm doing it right on time, so for those of you that are still here, I'm just going to launch the poll, which I've now done late, so I'm probably going to get in trouble. Sorry, Michaela, our head of marketing. I'm very naughty because I know how important this data is. So yes, please do, if you can see the poll, please give it a quick fill in before you leave. Whilst you are all doing that, just again, thank you all so much for joining. We will share insights. If any of you have any more questions for our panelists that we didn't get to, or want to know anything further, feel free to put me a quick message, and I'll see if I can get it answered by our lovely panel. And also to those of you that may or may not have heard already, I don't know why I've never plugged it on here before, but I'm going to, shameless plug for myself. I have launched a podcast called Word on the Street. We started it a good few months ago. So we now have the whole of series 1 out just after midnight, as we've spoken about quite a bit, are the sponsors of series 1. We have some fantastic interviews on there with lots of brands talking about what they want to hear from agencies. So people like Foot Locker, Organics, Game, some of which of those people have actually been on the webinar series as well as some fantastic agency leaders. Again, some of them having been on the podcast series, including people like iCrossing, etc. So yeah, there's 12 episodes out. Please do give them a listen. If you want a little snippet on what you can hear on all of them, then listen to episode 12, and that will give you a bit of information on all of them. Yeah, but otherwise, I hope you're all enjoying a much busier Q4. I'm looking forward to seeing the results of the poll. For those of you that are here and are still voting, I think there's a good 30 of you that have still voted, so thank you very much. And have a lovely, lovely Tuesday and rest of the week. Thank you all. See you soon.